Two aggressive bikers at a gas station in California thought they had found an easy target when they started harassing a woman alone inside the convenience store. What they didn't realize was that this woman was Sandra Bullock, and that Keanu Reeves was right there, watching their every move. What happened next would make those two men regret their choices for the rest of their lives. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy gripping stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow, we have another special one coming your way. It was a buzzing weekend in Hollywood. The streets of Beverly Hills were alive with flashing cameras, luxury cars, and eager fans lining the sidewalks, hoping for a glimpse of their favorite stars. Among the dazzling events that night, one stood out, a prestigious charity gala, organized to support young aspiring actors and filmmakers. Among the most anticipated guests, two names shined the brightest, Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock. The original plan was simple: arrive separately, walk the red carpet, do a few interviews, and fulfill their commitments. But just hours before the gala, Keanu had a different idea. Instead of battling the chaotic Los Angeles traffic alone, he suggested something better. "Let's take the coastal highway," he said. "Far from the congestion, far from the madness." Sandra agreed. The sun was setting as Keanu's sleek red Ferrari sliced through the open road, the golden hues of the Pacific glistening in the rearview mirror. For a brief moment, it was just the two of them, the hum of the engine, the salty ocean breeze, and the rare peace before a long night of flashing cameras and endless conversations. Sandra glanced at him, a smirk playing on her lips. "This is giving me major déjà vu." Keanu chuckled. "At least this time, we're not on a bus that's about to explode." Sandra raised an eyebrow. "True. But that does make me wonder, have you actually gotten better at driving since then?" Keanu feigned offense. "Are you saying I don't know how to drive?" "I'm just saying, in Speed, my character had to take the wheel because you were a little preoccupied with a terrorist." Keanu laughed. "Well, at least now we're heading to a charity gala. No bad guys in sight." Sandra folded her arms. "Never say that too soon." The road stretched ahead, open and serene. But then, a warning flashed on the dashboard. "Low fuel level." Keanu frowned, tapping the panel lightly. "Speaking of problems." Sandra glanced at the gauge and laughed. "Don't tell me you forgot to refuel." Keanu sighed. "Let's just say I was enjoying the drive." "Well, lucky for you, there's a gas station right there." It was one of those old roadside stops, just a couple of pumps, a faded convenience store, and a flickering neon sign that looked like it could die at any second. Keanu slowed down, pulling into the station. The Ferrari's engine purred before shutting off. Sandra slid off her sunglasses and stretched. "Since we're stopping, I'm grabbing a coffee." Keanu nodded. "I'll fill up the car. See you inside." As Sandra stepped out, Keanu opened the fuel tank and grabbed the pump. The soft click of the gas flowing broke the silence. And that's when they were noticed. Leaning against two motorcycles, two men watched them closely. Worn leather jackets. Chains wrapped around their wrists. Dark sunglasses reflecting the late afternoon sun. They didn't look like travelers just passing through. And when Sandra walked past them, something changed. The bigger man, massive, with tattooed arms and a thick beard, let out a slow, deliberate whistle. Well, he muttered. The second, leaner, with a gold tooth and a crooked grin, leaned forward. "Hollywood, huh? Don't see that every day." The big guy kept his gaze locked on Sandra as she stepped inside, seemingly unaware of them. The two bikers never took their eyes off her. Gold Tooth chuckled. "Maybe we should go introduce ourselves." The bigger man smirked. Without hesitation, they pushed off their bikes and started toward the store. Little did they know, they weren't the only ones watching. As the convenience store door shut behind Sandra, the small metallic bell jingled, echoing through the quiet space. Inside, the store was dimly lit and outdated, narrow aisles leading to a worn-down counter. In the back, an old television played a baseball game on mute while a radio hummed a slow, melancholic country tune. Sandra moved toward the coffee station, unaware of the danger walking through that door. But Keanu? Keanu saw everything. And what happened next? Well, let's just say, those two men picked the wrong woman to mess with. Sandra strolled casually toward the coffee station, grabbing a disposable cup and tearing open a sugar packet. The store was quiet, the air thick with the scent of gasoline and stale snacks. Outside, Keanu Reeves finished fueling the Ferrari, but his focus wasn't on the car anymore. His eyes were locked on the store's glass window, watching. And he didn't like what he saw. The two bikers, who had been lounging against their motorcycles just moments ago, were now moving. The bigger one, a bearded man with thick, tattooed arms, walked slowly, cracking his knuckles with deliberate ease, like he had all the time in the world. The other, leaner, with a crooked grin and a single gold tooth, kept his hands tucked deep into the pockets of his worn leather jacket. Keanu watched them exchange a smirk before stepping inside. He recognized the problem before it even started. But he didn't move. Not yet. Sometimes, the best thing to do is wait and observe. And that's exactly what he was going to do. Sandra poured her coffee, stirring in the sugar, her mind elsewhere. That's when she heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching from behind. She frowned slightly, glancing at the reflection in the coffee machine's glass. Two men. The bigger one leaned against the counter beside her as if he had casually decided to stop there. The other, the one with the gold tooth, hung back a little, his eyes never leaving her. Sandra didn't react, not yet. She was used to being recognized, used to strangers approaching her in public places. So when the big guy finally spoke, she didn't immediately assume the worst. Well, he drawled. Look who we have here. Hollywood in person. Sandra turned slowly, coffee cup in hand, forcing a polite smile. Guess I've been spotted. The skinny guy let out a low chuckle, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. And what brings a woman like you to a place like this? Sandra remained composed, but she noticed something. The way they were positioned. The way they were partially blocking the way to the exit. The glass door was still in sight, but somehow it suddenly seemed much farther away. She took a quiet breath, staying calm. Just grabbing some coffee while my friend fuels up outside. The big guy raised an eyebrow. Left you all alone in here? Doesn't seem very safe. Sandra let out a short, controlled laugh. I think I'll be just fine. She reached for a lid, preparing to leave. That's when the skinny biker took a subtle step to the side, just enough to block her path. Whoa, he said with a smirk. Already leaving? But we just started talking. Sandra's expression remained composed, but inside, her instincts kicked into high alert. Outside, Keanu Reeves watched through the glass. He saw how the bikers had closed in on her, saw the slight shift in Sandra's posture, the way she had realized what was happening. Still, he didn't move. Not yet. He wanted to see exactly how far these two were willing to take this. Sandra shifted slightly, testing her exit strategy, but the skinny biker mirrored her movement, keeping her cornered. The big guy grinned, leaning in just a little closer. Bet you're used to dealing with rude guys in Hollywood, huh? But we're real gentlemen around here. Sandra tightened her grip on her coffee cup. Now she knew, this wasn't just a casual conversation. She kept her voice calm but firm. If you're gentlemen, then I'm sure you wouldn't mind letting me through. The skinny biker's grin widened. Of course. But before you go, how about a little toast? Maybe we could take you somewhere more fun. Outside, Keanu's expression hardened. He saw the biker with the gold tooth gesture with his hands as he spoke. He saw Sandra take a step back. And he knew what was about to happen. These guys were testing her limits. And if she tried to walk away, they might try to stop her. Keanu took a slow breath. Now it was just a matter of time. But still, he waited. The big guy crossed his arms, still smirking. "Come on now, no need to be scared." The skinny one added, "We just want to talk a little." Sandra knew she had to get out. Now. She took another step back, positioning herself for an exit. And that's when it happened. The skinny biker reached out and grabbed her arm. Sandra froze. And at that exact moment, Keanu Reeves stepped away from the Ferrari. His walk was slow, controlled. But now, he was ready to act. Inside, Sandra felt the firm grip of the biker tightening around her wrist. She didn't panic, didn't scream. But she knew this was the moment. The big guy smirked. "What's the matter? Don't like a little attention?" The skinny biker squeezed her arm slightly, testing her reaction. Sandra's pulse quickened, but her expression didn't waver. "I told you, I need to go." She pulled back, trying to break free discreetly. The biker held on just a little longer. "Relax, Star," he murmured. "We're just having fun." And that's when it happened. The store's door swung open. The metallic bell above it let out a sharp, piercing ring. And everything inside that store changed. Keanu Reeves stepped inside. Slow. Controlled. Each step made the old wooden floor creak slightly beneath his weight. The air inside the store shifted instantly. The store clerk, a skinny kid wearing a backward cap, froze in place, sensing the sudden change. Sandra felt it too. And most importantly, the bikers felt it. The skinny biker still had his hand wrapped around Sandra's arm, but now he wasn't moving. His eyes lifted to Keanu, who had stopped just a few feet away. The bigger biker uncrossed his arms, scanning Keanu from head to toe. Well, he muttered. Keanu didn't say a word. He simply glanced at Sandra, making sure she was okay. It was quick, subtle, but Sandra understood immediately. The skinny biker noticed this silent exchange. He let go of her arm, but he tried to act like he was still in control. "And you didn't even introduce us to your friend," he said with a smirk. Keanu finally broke the silence. His voice was calm, steady, but there was something in it that made even the bigger biker stiffen. "You're going to apologize to her." The skinny biker squinted slightly. "What?" Keanu didn't repeat himself. Instead, he took a single step forward. It wasn't much, just enough for both bikers to instinctively shift back half an inch. It was subtle, but Keanu noticed. And more importantly, the bikers noticed that he noticed. The bigger biker forced out a dry chuckle. "Listen, Reeves, we didn't do anything. We were just messing around." Keanu didn't look at him. His eyes stayed locked on the skinny one. "Apologize." The store clerk swallowed nervously. Sandra remained quiet, watching. The skinny biker let out a forced smirk. "I think you're taking this a little too seriously, man. Relax." Keanu took another step forward. Now he was barely a meter away, close enough that they could feel his presence like a weight pressing down on them. His head tilted slightly. "I don't repeat myself." The skinny biker's smirk faded. He glanced at the bigger biker. But the bigger biker didn't say a word. He had realized something. The game had changed. They were no longer in control. The skinny biker exhaled sharply, then muttered toward Sandra, "Sorry." Sandra crossed her arms. That was pathetic. Keanu raised an eyebrow slightly. The bigger biker clenched his jaw, humiliation settling in. His eyes flicked to Keanu. "Happy now?" Keanu shrugged. "Almost." The store clerk was holding his breath. The bigger biker inhaled deeply, then grabbed his friend's arm. "Let's go." But before stepping outside, he turned back one last time, his eyes locking onto Keanu's. His voice was low, cold. "This ain't over." Keanu didn't blink. He just watched them walk out of the store and back to their bikes. The sound of their engines rumbled through the gas station. And then, they were gone. Sandra let out a long breath, only now realizing how tense she had been. Keanu watched her for a moment. "You okay?" She let out a half laugh, still catching her breath. "Yeah. Just didn't expect my coffee stop to turn into an action scene." The store clerk was still standing there, mouth slightly open. "Dude, that was insane." Keanu didn't answer. He was still looking outside. The parking lot was empty now. But something felt off. He knew those two bikers weren't the type to just let things go. Maybe this wasn't over yet. Keanu stepped outside first, scanning the surroundings. The sun was still high. The gas station was still empty. But then, he stopped. Sandra noticed the hesitation as she stepped out behind him. "What is it?" Keanu didn't answer right away. Something was different. Sandra followed his gaze. And then, she saw it. Lying next to the Ferrari on the asphalt was a black motorcycle helmet. Tossed carelessly. It hadn't been there before. Keanu narrowed his eyes. Sandra felt a chill creep up her spine. Did they forget it? Keanu took a slow step forward, eyeing the object. He didn't pick it up. He just stared at it. There was no note. No message. But he didn't need words to understand what it meant. Sandra swallowed hard. She wasn't naive. Leaving something behind like this wasn't an accident. It was a silent message. Maybe even a trap, to see how they would react. Keanu finally moved. He ignored the helmet and opened the car door. "Let's go." Sandra didn't argue. She got in quickly. Keanu took one last look around. Then, without another word, he started the engine. The Ferrari's powerful roars shattered the eerie silence of the gas station. They pulled away slowly. And behind them, the helmet remained there. Untouched. As if someone was waiting to see what they would do with it. They drove in silence for a few minutes. Then, finally, Sandra spoke. "Do you think that was on purpose?" Keanu kept his eyes on the road. His voice was calm, but firm. "Yes." Sandra ran a hand through her hair, trying to process it. "But why? If they wanted to do something, wouldn't it have been easier back there?" Keanu's grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. Some guys don't act right away. They wait for the right moment. Sandra didn't like that answer. She glanced at the rearview mirror. And that's when her heart dropped. Back on the road, in the distance. A pair of headlights. Two motorcycles. Gaining on them. Fast. Something was coming toward them. Something fast. Two motorcycles. Sandra felt her stomach twist the moment she saw them. Because now, there was no doubt. They were being followed. The red Ferrari roared against the hot asphalt of the highway. The afternoon sun still blazed in the sky, but inside the car, the air was thick with tension. Sandra glanced at the rearview mirror, her body stiff. "Keanu, tell me I'm imagining this." Keanu kept his eyes on the road but took a quick glance at the mirror. And there they were. Two motorcycles. They weren't speeding. They weren't overtaking. They were just there. Following. Matching the Ferrari's pace. Silent. Watching. Waiting. Keanu took a slow, steady breath. If they accelerated too much, they'd attract unwanted attention on the highway. If they slowed down, the bikers might close the gap. This was a waiting game. And Keanu Reeves didn't lose at these kinds of games. Sandra exhaled slowly. "What do they want?" Keanu didn't answer immediately. He kept the car steady, his fingers relaxed on the wheel, but his mind racing. "We're still close to the city," he finally said. "They won't do anything here." Sandra clenched her fingers on her lap. "And what if they wait until we leave the highway?" Keanu turned to her for the briefest second. Then we won't let that happen. Ahead, the highway stretched into the horizon. But soon, they would hit a curve leading to a more isolated area. Keanu knew he had to make a move now. So, in a calculated test, he slightly reduced speed. Maybe, just maybe, they were overthinking this. Maybe the bikers would just pass them. But in the mirror, Sandra saw it first. The bikers slowed down too. Matching them. Exactly. Sandra's breath hitched. Keanu kept his face neutral. But now, he was sure. They weren't imagining things. They were being hunted. And now, it was time to act. Keanu's grip tightened on the steering wheel. His eyes scanned the road signs ahead. A detour. An exit ramp. It would take them off the highway onto smaller roads. Not the ideal route to the charity gala. But that was the least of their problems now. Sandra glanced at him. "You're about to do something, aren't you?" Keanu smirked. Not a smirk of amusement. The kind of calm, knowing smile of a man who had seen far worse than this. "Hold on tight." That was all he said. Then, he shifted gears. The Ferrari jerked slightly, then veered sharply onto the exit ramp. Tires screeched against pavement. The car cut away from the main highway onto a smaller, more secluded road. And in the rearview mirror, the bikers reacted. They followed. Sandra bit her lip. They took the bait. Keanu's hand stayed steady on the wheel. Now, let's see how far they're willing to go. The road was narrower now, full of sharp curves. Perfect terrain for motorcycles. Not so perfect for a sports car. And the bikers knew it. They accelerated. Sandra turned her head, looking out the window. The bigger biker was on the right now, keeping dangerously close. He wasn't trying to pass. He was just watching Keanu. Keanu felt his pulse pick up, not out of fear, but because now he knew. There was no turning back. They wanted something. And he wasn't about to wait to find out what. The first hostile move came fast. The skinny biker shot forward, dangerously close to the Ferrari's left side. Sandra gripped the dashboard. "Keanu, they're getting too close." Keanu didn't panic. Instead, he did something precise. He tapped the brakes. Just slightly. The Ferrari slowed for a fraction of a second. The biker, caught off guard, wobbled. He had to correct his balance fast to avoid skidding. Keanu took advantage. He gripped the wheel and cut through a sharp curve without losing much speed. The Ferrari slid smoothly through the turn. But for the motorcycles, the angle was much harder to take at this speed. The skinny biker fell back slightly. Sandra exhaled. You threw off his timing. Keanu didn't respond. Because he knew. This wasn't over yet. The road was still narrowing. And the bikers weren't backing down. Then, the big one did something unexpected. He reached into his jacket. Sandra saw it before Keanu did. Her eyes widened. He's got a chain. Keanu barely had a second to react. The biker swung it into the air and flung it straight at the Ferrari's windshield. For a brief moment, time slowed. The chain spun, slicing through the air, coming right at them. Keanu's mind processed 3 options in a fraction of a second. Swerve, risk losing control. Hit the brakes, risk the bikers closing in. Accelerate, risk a direct hit. He chose none of them. Instead, he flicked the wheel just slightly to the right. The Ferrari tilted just enough. And the chain missed. It whipped past, grazing the hood with a sharp metallic clang before disappearing behind them. Sandra gasped. Keanu's eyes remained locked ahead. His voice was low, controlled. They just escalated this. Sandra's pulse was pounding. Keanu, They're not just trying to scare us anymore. Keanu's jaw tightened. He already knew that. And now, they were done playing defense. Keanu scanned the road ahead. He spotted something. An upcoming bridge. Narrow. Concrete barriers on both sides. No room for motorcycles to maneuver easily. Perfect. He shifted gears. You might want to hold on again. Sandra barely had time to react. Before Keanu slammed the gas pedal, the Ferrari launched forward, straight toward the bridge. And behind them, the bikers weren't giving up yet. The chain flew through the air, heading straight for the Ferrari's windshield. Sandra held her breath, eyes wide. Keanu. But Keanu was already reacting. With a sharp, precise movement, he jerked the steering wheel to the left. The car swerved just in time. The chain missed the windshield by inches, slamming onto the asphalt behind them with a metallic clang. Sandra exhaled sharply, her heart pounding. They're completely insane. Keanu kept his focus on the road. Now, there was no doubt. This wasn't just a chase. This was an attack. And he wasn't about to wait for the next strike. Keanu assessed the situation in seconds. The road was narrow, full of tight curves. The bikers were pressing them, waiting for them to make a mistake. But Keanu Reeves wasn't the kind of man who made mistakes under pressure. His jaw clenched. His voice steady. Hold on. Sandra gripped the dashboard tightly. What are you going to do? Keanu took a deep breath. Turn the tables. And then, he suddenly let go of the accelerator. The Ferrari slowed down abruptly. The bikers had no time to react. The big guy, who had been preparing for another attack, almost crashed into the back of the car. He swerved at the last second to avoid colliding. The skinny biker, caught off guard, also lost balance for a moment. And that was exactly what Keanu wanted. He had thrown them off their rhythm. Now, it was his turn to strike. Keanu shifted gears. The Ferrari roared back to life. Now, he was in control of the chase. The bikers scrambled to regain position, but Keanu wasn't going to let that happen. He made a calculated maneuver, shifting closer to the side of the road, forcing them to spread out. The skinny biker tried to close in again. Keanu saw him coming. With a subtle flick of the steering wheel, he kicked up a thick cloud of dust and gravel. The biker got a face full of dirt, momentarily blinded. His bike wobbled. He had to slow down to regain control. Now, only one remained. The big guy. Sandra saw his expression as he pulled up beside them. It wasn't just anger. It was wounded pride. And men like him, men like that, don't like losing. Keanu knew what he was trying to do. He wasn't just trying to intimidate. He was trying to force Keanu off the road. But Keanu had other plans. He kept the Ferrari steady, pretending not to react. Then, at the perfect moment, he flicked the wheel slightly, just enough to make it look like he was about to ram the biker. Instinct took over. The biker yanked his handlebars to dodge. But he was going too fast. And the road was unforgiving. His bike swerved violently. For a second, he lost control. And 1 second was all Keanu needed. The biker fought to regain balance. But his motorcycle clipped the edge of the curb. His bike shook violently. And he was forced to brake hard to avoid wiping out. Keanu didn't wait. He slammed the accelerator. Sandra looked back. The bikers were falling behind. They weren't chasing anymore. They had lost. Keanu kept the speed high for a few more miles. Sandra kept checking the mirror, expecting to see them again. But they never came. When they finally merged onto a more populated road, she let out a long, shaky sigh. I think it's over. Keanu kept his eyes on the road, but his voice was cautious. For now. Sandra glanced at him. You think they'll try again? Keanu pressed his lips together for a moment. Guys like them don't like losing. She exhaled sharply. Great. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Keanu finally smirked a little. Just a guess. Sandra shook her head, but let out a short laugh, because somehow she knew he was right. The Ferrari continued down the road, blending into traffic. But Keanu still checked the mirror every now and then. Because some stories don't end that easily. The red Ferrari glided smoothly up to the entrance of the luxury hotel. The charity event was already in full swing. Camera flashes. Reporters at the entrance. Elegantly dressed guests mingling beneath sparkling chandeliers. It was a world away from what had just happened. Sandra let out a relieved sigh. Well, looks like we made it in one piece. Keanu didn't answer right away. His gaze lingered on the rearview mirror. Scanning. Watching. Sandra noticed. Keanu, are you still worried about those guys? He finally turned away from the mirror and gave her a reassuring nod. Let's go inside. Don't worry. His tone was calm. But deep down, something still felt off. The event stretched on. Sandra finally seemed relaxed, chatting and laughing with guests. Keanu, on the other hand, needed a moment of quiet. He stepped away from the main hall and took the elevator down to the hotel parking garage. The place was nearly silent. Dim lights cast long shadows between the rows of parked luxury cars. Keanu walked calmly toward the Ferrari. Then, he stopped. His eyes narrowed slightly. A deep scratch ran across the side of the car. Deliberate. Intentional. Keanu's expression didn't change. But he knew. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. Back at the event, Sandra was still sipping wine, laughing at something someone had said. When she saw Keanu, she raised an eyebrow. You disappeared. Where were you? Keanu picked up a champagne glass from a passing waiter. He raised it slightly in the air and changed the subject. I think we can toast now. Sandra narrowed her eyes, suspicious. Are you sure? Keanu smiled calmly. Absolutely. They clinked glasses. And Sandra never knew that on that very same night, a single scratch on the side of a car ended a war before it ever truly began. Because some battles aren't won with fists or words. Some are settled in silence, where only those who truly understand the game know who actually won.